Right, so welcome everyone. We're up to 400 people that have joined the call now, so we will make a start for February's virtual health tug. So welcome to the session, and just a quick introduction to your tug organising team. So we consist, there's 4 people that help run the virtual health tug. You've got Nicole Law, myself, Simon Beaumont, Lindsay Betzendahl, and Mark Connolly. We're all on Twitter, our handles are down there, and if you've ever got any questions about the health tug or would like to offer your services to speak, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us and we'll be more than happy to help.
I'd like to also add that we have a Twitter Health Tug account as well. It's just @HealthTug.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. So on to today's tug and the agenda for today's meeting. We're fortunate enough to have 2 fantastic sessions planned, one by Jana and Mark talking about implementing row-level security, which is particularly pertinent given that healthcare data is very personal and private. So they will be sharing techniques to learn how to do that in Tableau and safeguard the risk for your organisation in terms of showing appropriate data to your audiences. And then we are joined by all-round rock star, Mr. Miller. So Sean Miller, who works for Cerner, will be joining us to share how they help people see and understand their data within health systems. So using the Cerner Health Analytics platform to allow health systems to manage and analyse episodes of care, avoidable emergency admission department utilisation, and the management of high-cost members. So as always in tradition in recent tugs, before we hand over to Jana, Mark and Sean, we just wanted to share some of the community highlights that have been going on across the Tableau community over the last couple of months since we last met. So to start with, just showcasing some of the best vizzes that have been healthcare related over the last couple of months. There's been 2 fantastic health related Viz of the day, one by Diliana, relating to the coronavirus outbreak, and another by Lali, looking at the 2019 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. It's easier to say than it is to read. And also, lastly, as always, we just want to showcase the recent Project Health Viz that was related to prison health and the fantastic effort by Mira looking at health morbidity in Brazilian prisons. For those of you that are new to the Tableau Public community, if you wanted to view Viz of the Days, just go on to tableaupublic.com, click on the gallery, and you can then search. And some of those Vizes are now also categorized, which is a fantastic development that's happened recently. And you can also search using the search functionality on Tableau Public for #ProjectHealthViz if you wanted to be able to see all the fantastic creations that were done over recent entries. I think, Lindsay, last month's was the one where you partnered up with IronQuest, so I think it was in excess of about 30 entries.
That's correct.
So it was awesome to work. Cool. And then we had a very special announcement. So you may have noticed that in February, recently in the last couple of weeks, the 2020 Zen Masters were announced. And we wanted to give an extra special call out to one of the new Zen Masters for 2020, who may well be our own virtual health tug, Lindsay Betzendahl. So Lindsay, just on behalf of everyone in the community, but especially in the healthcare community, thank you for everything that you do. And it was so richly deserved, and we're all incredibly proud of you. So awesome job, and enjoy. We look forward to having a picture of you with your rock when it's delivered later in the year.
Thank you, Simon.
And just a reminder, if people do want to connect with the Zens, feel free to check out Tableau's website. They have a page on it, and all of the contact details of all of the Zens are available, so you can reach out and connect to people and see who they are. And just thinking ahead, if you would like to offer your services to speak at a future health tug, or have ideas for interesting innovative topics, please do reach out to any of the 4 of us or via the Health Tug Twitter handle, and give us your suggestions. So we're always on the lookout for new content and speakers, and we know we've got an amazing community of content that's out there. So please do volunteer, and we'll do all that we can to support you to make a success of your session. So without further ado, I will stop talking and hand over to Jana and Mark to be able to start on low-level security.
Well, thanks, Simon. I will share my screen. I think you have to give the screen up. Perfect. All right. To the panelists, you're able to see my screen, correct?
Looks
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So I'll kick this off. Today, Jana and I are going to be partnering up. So we'll be going back and forth between screens to talk about the topic of role-level security. The hope is that after kind of going through this presentation, that you have a few different ideas of where you might be wanting to implement this at your organization. So as we go through, just as a reminder, please use the Q&A section in Zoom to ask any questions. We'll follow up at the end and answer a few of those. The ones that we can't, we can address offline. We'll go in, Jana, if you don't want to, if you want to start off with a little bit of a background on you.
Sure. So I'm a business intelligence developer at Evangelical Community Hospital, which is an independent hospital located in central Pennsylvania. I'm part of a small group. There's actually only 4 of us that do analytics, automate processes. We satisfy vendor requests, pull data for every department and all levels of the hospital. So we wear many different hats. It's very exciting. Regarding Tableau, I'm primarily responsible for the operations and revenue cycle dashboards.
And I'm Mark. In addition to being a co-lead for this healthcare group, I am also a full-time role business intelligence lead at Chicago Medicine, which is a hospital on the south side of Chicago. I am involved with a lot around engaging with our end users of reports as well as our report developers, but specifically, and why I'm talking today, I was involved in a project developing provider level reporting in Tableau, which had to utilize this topic. So before we dive in, we know this topic might be new for folks that are on the call. And while Tableau does have a help guide and a formal definition, I want to kind of provide a brief summary of it. Role level security is the way that you as a report developer can make sure that when people connect to your data on Tableau server, that they're only seeing the things that they're supposed to. And the beauty about this is that you don't need to make separate workbooks or filters. And there are a couple different approaches that we're going to run through today. And that's really kind of role level security. And I think actually it goes back to you, Jana, around why do we care about this?
It does. So data security is really important across all industries, but it's especially relevant in healthcare. And in healthcare, data security is more about just the regulatory compliance part of it. It really needs to be central to the hospital's patient-first focus, as it's critical in maintaining that customer trust and organizational health. So by implementing security in your workbooks, whether it's by group membership or context to control access to the rows or data fields, you're ensuring that you're only sharing the necessary data to the appropriate individuals. So for a use case, I mean, there's many use cases, but one in particular for Evangelical is as Tableau grew in our organization, we saw more demand from people wanting to see their underlying data. And the summary view wasn't really enough. They wanted to click and drill down into the details. So this posed an issue because a lot of the details include that HIPAA data that not everyone who had access to our dashboards were or should have been privy to the data details. So for a while, we actually said, no, they couldn't have it. We played with, project folder setup. We would provide details that the business could use to look up the patient data in the system, which wasn't really efficient, and it really wasn't supporting our goal of self-service analytics. So we needed a way to lock down that private data.
So we're gonna now dive into kind of the meat of the presentation. And I think the beauty with this concept of row-level security is there's actually a few different ways that you can implement this. And we're hoping that by going through a couple of these methods, it'll help you figure out what might be the most appropriate for your need and your organization. So I'm gonna dive into the first one, the first method of manually defined user filters. So the steps to creating this are outlined here, and I'm going to read through them, and then I'm going to jump off and do a live demo of how this looks. For those on the call, we will be providing these slides that have kind of screenshots of what we're going to dive off of. But the first step to using this is to actually have your workbook built. The second, you sign in a Tableau server from your desktop. You need to make sure that you're actually logged in. From there, you have a drop down under the server toolbar where you can choose this option called Create User Filter. Once you're there, you can choose the field that you actually want to filter off of. You can name the filter to make it easy if you're using multiple. And then you can go through and actually identify which users and groups need to be seeing what specific data from that field you've chosen. After that, you can kind of rinse and repeat through different users and groups, finally hitting OK. That creates a filter that you can bring into the filter shelf, and you actually have the ability to check how the report will function using this filter as user menu. So I'm going to jump off of our slides and jump into Tableau. On the panelist side, are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Cool. So not a flashy dashboard that we have here, and I'm actually using data that I got from Sean, our second speaker. He had a great Tableau Public 20 for 20 data sets, and I'm using the Jeopardy data set for the demo for this. I felt like we should be a little on theme today. So I have this dashboard, and what I need to do, if I need to make a user filter, is go up here where it says server at the top of the toolbar. You can see that I've already signed in. If you are not signed in, it'll just give you the option to sign in. For your organization, you'll have different servers and potentially sites that you log into. For today, I'm just using our kind of main street. Once you're signed in, you'll notice that while I'm on a dashboard, and if I were to follow my steps, I can see this create user filters actually grayed out. And the reason it is because I need to navigate to a sheet first. So I'm going to click on this first one, questions, and go to the sheet. And what I want to do is I want to create a user filter for me, my boss, and her boss to see different things. So I'm going to go to server, create user filter, and I'm going to do this on category. I want to make sure that I can see just science and sports when I look at the report. And when my boss logs in, I want her to be able to see world history and history for categories. So I'm going to click category. Okay, hopefully a quick second. Perfect. And then this window pops up for you. You have the ability to rename it should you want. I'm just going to keep it the default. Next, you have to identify the user. So what I'm going to do is look up my name. And these are your users on your Tableau server. So you can see there's another person that has the last name at our organization, but I'm just going to click my name. You do have the ability, should you want, to actually choose groups if you have Active Directory groups. And this is great if you don't want to go by individual folks. So I'll clear this. You can see I have my name. And on the right-hand side of the screen, it has all of the different categories in my data set. And while it'd be great to go and check everything that I want, you do have the ability to use this find feature. You do have also the ability to just check all, but I'm going to hit find, and it'll open up another window where I can now identify exactly what kind of fields in that dimension I want to have permissions to look at. For the purpose of today, I'm just going to do the exact match, and I'm going to look up two. I'm going to do science. Hit find, check the box, repeat with sports, exact match, check the box, and hit OK. Takes a second. Great. Now I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to do this for my boss. So do Springman, find Mary Kate, select her name. You'll see it come through. I can do find, and again, I'm going to do an exact match. For this, for the purpose, I'm just going to do history. I will do it once, and I'll check that box and hit OK. So I now have two user filter, or I have identified the two things or the two users that are going to have different permissions set up. But if I wanted to add a third and I wanted to copy what my boss's permissions were set up, what I could do is go to her boss or chief analytic officer, like wall, check the box. And now I'm going to just clear this so there's less. So I'm looking at Mike's permissions, and I can actually go copy from somebody else's permissions that I've set up. So I'm going to click Mary Kate's, and it'll pull over her permissions onto Mike's. Once I'm done, I'll just hit OK. And you'll see the user filter shows up actually as a set. You can then bring it into your filters box up here. Takes a second. And what it's doing, this is the live demo. It should be working. Okay, cool. So now what it's showing me is just everything that I have been granted permissions to view. And what I can do is, I think it's easier to actually see at the dashboard. I'm going to apply this to all using this data source, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard. So you'll see now when I'm logged in, I can see just science and sports. And if you want to check that this permission is actually working as expected, you can go down here. Whenever you're signed into the server, you actually have this option where you can filter as a user. So you can see what other users are going to see when they interact with your report. So I can go in and say, I want to see Springman, hit her name, and I take a second. Server's a little slow today. I'll wait while this is going. And then you can see that now, whenever Mary Kate is logged in, she would just see history. So this is a great way to check that the approach that you've taken using these manually defined filters is actually doing what you'd expect. As you can see, this is a very manual process, but it may be great for organizations that have smaller number of end users that you're kind of navigating with. For other methods that scale a little bit better, we're going to jump into the rest of the presentation. So I'm going to flip back to our slides, and I will go here. So back to you, Jana.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
So we had an HR dashboard that used security as a filter, and this worked great until a team member inadvertently removed it from the filter. So our users couldn't web edit at the time, and only a few users had access to Tableau Desktop, but we figured if we ever wanted to allow web edit or prevent another incident from occurring, we really had to explore alternative ways to keep that data private. So using data source filters was a solution for us to prevent novice users from removing or replacing fields in the filter box. It allows us to provide our data openly and securely. So I'm going to walk through slides on how to implement the data source filter, and then I'll also give you a quick live demonstration of how to do it in a workbook. So first you're going to have to build a workbook, and then you add the security data source. So we use Alteryx here, and I built an Alteryx workflow that reads the Active Directory groups, and then it tells me whether or not that person has access to the system. So you can do this at a system level, a department level, a field level. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to do it at whether or not they should or should not have access. And then you'll see later if the user has access, then you'll see the details, and then if they don't, we're going to hide those data details. But the second step is you need to create a username calculation so that Tableau Workbook recognizes the user. And then you would blend the data sources together using that username calculation that you've created. Then you have to tell Tableau who the username is that you're comparing it to. So I'll show you how to create this simple calculation. You can see it's on the conditions tab of the employee ID field. So we'll walk through that in a little bit. And then you'll need to create a calculation so that Tableau can look for that security access and then give you the value that you want displayed. So that's what step 5 is doing. And again, we'll walk through that. And then in step 6, we're using the new field. And then in step 7, you would hide that tooltip so that that value can't be seen when you view the details of the data, or you can actually hide the field in the data set so that it's not usable if someone's trying to web edit or has access to desktop. And then I'll show you also how Mark did, where you can change the user to validate that your calculations are working. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you should be looking at a workbook that has customer name and PIN number. So basically, I just joined to a fake data set of we're going to pretend that we're working with customers, and these are PIN numbers that I don't want everyone to have access to. So you would just join to your data source like normal, and then you would need to join to your security data source. So in this instance, I just created a Microsoft Excel workbook. I just called it security. We're going to open that up. I only have 2 of us in there, but that's fine for this demonstration. So you'll see it was added to my data sets. And then in my main data set, we're going to create that calculation, username. Okay. And then I'll hit OK. Now we're going to blend the 2 data sets together on the username field that we just created. So I'm going to go to data, edit relationships, and I'm just going to make sure that my main data set is my primary data source. And then we're going to custom. So I just want my username field to equal my employee ID. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now we just have to make sure that they're linked. So I'm going to come back to the security workbook or the security data set and just link my fields together. You'll see it turned orange there. Okay. So now we need to use the data source filters to exclude everything that's not relevant to the current user. So to do this, if you remember from the slides, the condition tab, so we're going to right click on the data, the security data source and do edit data source filters. Okay, and it brings up a new window. We're going to hit add. We're going to select the employee ID. And then here, this is where I'm going to go to the conditions tab. And by formula, we're going to set that employee ID to the user that's logged in. So we're just going to do employee ID equals that username function, and then hit OK. And you'll see it's keeping my initials or my login because I'm the one that's logged in. And I'll hit OK. So actually, that's it. You're now ready to use the security to hide show fields. So your next step would be to hide, in this case, I'm going to hide the PIN number if the person doesn't have access. So to do that, this is where you would create your calculations. So I'm going to click on the main data set and create a calculation. And I'm going to call this PIN secured, just so users that do have access and can see the PIN number recognize that it is a secured field. So if anyone's concerned with HIPAA, that it should indicate that, or indicate to them anyway, that if they don't have access, that field should be hidden. So then I'm just going to type my calculation out. If my access is a yes, and in my file I have it indicated as a yes, no, YN. That's why I'm using Y here. Then I want PIN number is a number, so I'm going to turn it into a string. Oops, I didn't quite. Else, and I like to do an else if because I like to make sure if for some reason in the file it doesn't come through as a yes or a no, or it's empty, then I have a backup. So I'm just, oops, if they're a no, I want to enter secured. And this, for some reason, they're not in the file, it's a not yes or it's not a no, I just want to do an else blank. Okay, so basically all I'm saying here is if they have access, then give me the PIN number as a string. Otherwise, it'll give me a PIN number with commas as a number, and we don't want that. Otherwise, if they don't have access, then I want the word secure to be displayed. So this calculation may be different per your scenario. So if you're, again, dealing with numbers, then you're not going to be able to insert secure it as the value that displays. But your calculation should be similar to this. And I also said earlier that you can do this at the department level, the field level, the system level. So again, this is kind of where that level of security that you're creating might change. So if you're doing it at a field level, also your calculation would have to include that field evaluation. So anyway, I'm going to hit OK. And now to use the new calculation, you just replace it with the field you're trying to hide. And you'll see, if you remember, I don't have access, so that's why it's changed to secured. And then you can either disable your tooltips by deselecting the check mark, or you can just go ahead and hide that field that has the value. So you right click and then you select hide, and that will prevent it from displaying in the data details if they were to click and view that data behind your graph or whatever you're securing. So now you can see, again, I don't have access, that's why it says secured. If I do change it to the other user that does, you'll see the PIN numbers do display now. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mark so he can talk about that third method of security.
Perfect. Let's see if I can get us back. Cool. You're able to see my screen, right, Jana? All right, so this third method that we're going to talk about, it's actually, I think, one of the trickiest to discuss. It does involve things outside of the typical workspace that a report developer is involved in. And really, it brings in a lot of different concepts of how our server, the Tableau server, communicates with our SQL server as well as our workbook viewers. So this screenshot that we have is actually directly from the Tableau help guide on this. But really, I'm gonna try to walk through a little bit of this here. So on our Tableau server, what many people don't realize is that each server actually has its own account that is used to create the server and run things. So in the same way that you as a workbook viewer have your own maybe login credentials, there's actually an account for the Tableau server. And you can use this account to leverage maybe your SQL server to implement row level security at the database level. So I'm gonna kind of walk through what this might look like. So on the left-hand side of this view, we have our workbook viewers, and they're gonna go to our Tableau server. So let's just take Jay Smith. Jay Smith accesses a workbook, and they wanna look at data for this account X in that workbook. What we can do, and the idea behind the impersonate method, is when we develop the workbook, we grant the server the permissions to take Jay Smith's credentials, impersonate them against the SQL database to see what data that Jay Smith has at the database level. So this shifts away from doing the check like Jana was walking through at the work, with calculated fields, and instead is putting that onus on your DBAs, your database administrators, to manage permissions that way. So I'm going to pause and try to say that back one other time. So and kind of go right to left. So for a lot of folks, they have the ability not to just develop things on Tableau, but also develop things or query things on their SQL server. And they get, for their own account, permissions to access their SQL server, where they can do direct queries and things like that. They also need to have the same credentials to access Tableau server. And you also need to set up the account, like the Tableau server account, to have the permissions to impersonate other members on the SQL server. So things and requirements to actually use this feature. The one major drawback with using this is that this only works for live connections, which might eliminate some of your needs if you have large data sets that you're working with. You also need to have individual database accounts for all your Tableau users. I believe you aren't able to necessarily pass permissions through Active Directory groups. It could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. You do need to also make sure that the credentials between the Tableau user, their Tableau user account, as well as their SQL Server account match. And the way that you're handling authentication is the same between Tableau Server and SQL Server. You also then need a workbook that's actually going to enforce that, so you're connecting to data that has the setup. And then again, you actually need a SQL Server database account that is the same as your Tableau Server account, but it has this permission called Impersonate, which allows the Tableau account to take anyone who's connecting to it, to take their credentials and check it against your database level. I believe, yep. So I'm going to just kind of walk through what this would look like from its steps. We actually don't have anything that goes through this as a live example, but want to just provide this for folks that think this might be something that they may be able to do at their organization. So the steps, the first thing, you have that Tableau server run as account, so that account that's making sure your server can actually run. That needs to have impersonate permissions to your SQL Server database. And that's a specific permission that a database administrator can set up for that account. What you need to do is you need to have individual accounts. So like myself, I would need to have read access to whatever that table is that I'm trying to connect to, so I can develop my report. When you log in and try to connect to your Microsoft SQL Server, you'll use the Windows Integrated Security, which is like the preferred option that they have. You'll put in your server name and everything like that, and you'll develop your workbook like you would any other. But when you go to publish, what you need to do, it comes down to this authentication. And you have the ability, if you go through the normal login here, to choose this impersonate via server run as account. So if you choose that, it means two things. It means that your Tableau server has permissions to impersonate the permissions of anyone that's connecting to the report, and that person also has permissions at the individual data source level. Again, I know that one is one of the trickier kind of concepts, but it is a method for you to actually bring in row-level security. It does put a little bit more of the onus for permissioning on the database side, but wanted to provide it as a third method for our row-level security. So with that, we'll wrap up. And I know, I think I saw we had quite a few questions coming in. So I'll stop sharing if we want to just kind of look at the Q&A that came through.
Mark, do you want to just read through the questions, and you and Jana can take turns answering them if you have them?
Yep. So I'm just going to go in the order that they came in. And do you know how much time we have, Nicole, before we have to hand over to Sean?
About 15 minutes.
Okay. We'll go through a couple of these. So the first one that came through was, can you secure or mask specific columns of data? Jana, I believe you touched on this, correct?
So when I right-clicked and I hid the PIN number from my data set, that actually wipes it out of that summary view. So I don't know if the question was to, like, if you want to mask it, then that's kind of what I did with the secured text. But if you want to remove it altogether from being able to be like downloaded to an Excel worksheet or CSV or crosstab or view it in that summary data, then you really need to hide it from your data set initially.
Yep. And I think we had a couple of questions that were similar to that. I think the other thing that you can do is on the like permissioning side, you can still restrict a little bit of the like the permissions to actually even download the data. So people are just connecting with the workbook as it is. So there are some things you can do along that way. The next question down, is there a way to have all access but exclude a couple of options rather than selecting the majority of options? So I think this is likely referencing the manual user filter. You do have, I believe, the ability to kind of do the opposite of that. There's a couple of things I can show. I'll flip back to my screen actually. Nicole, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
I think I need you to give up your screen though.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll share back. I'll get that out of the way. You do have a couple of different options. Right now, this is showing everything that's in my set. You do have the ability to show like kind of the in and out. So if I think it helps sometimes to just see this visually. Actually, the other one's better. If I go here, there's like kind of two ways that this can play up. Oops. And I want to show in or out of the set. Oh, and I don't need the filter on it. So I can see you can use it this way where you can kind of play off of things and say like, oh, I only know I want to exclude this one thing or this like these a couple of things. You do have the ability to actually choose those, and then in your filter you would show like everything that's out of the set. So you do have that. The other options that you have, if you were to go in and edit on this, just click one. You do have the ability to kind of hit like all for you. And then if there were only a couple that you wanted to select, you could do it that way as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can leverage either the like filter in the main prompt, or once it's available, bringing it into your view there. So next question, I'll stop my share. Cool. We talked about, does this restrict the underlying data when downloaded? Again, that one, I think we got live. There was a question on where these sessions are stored. Nicole, is that where you were going to show?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, flip back.
Okay. They are stored on our communitytableau.com site /group/healthcare. They're under recent virtual hug and materials. If you click on them, you'll see the links with materials. And they're also available on YouTube under Tableau.
Thank you. Moving down, I'm just reading the whole thing.
So, Mark, it looks like someone has a question about the security blend, and also I thought I would just demonstrate quickly to the view when you hide that actual data. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Perfect. Thank you.
So in the demonstration, I did a blend. You don't have to do a blend, I just did it for the demonstration. So I created a second workbook here, and you can see in the data source, I'm joining the two. Now to do this, I did have to go to my main data source first, and then create that username calculation, that username calculation. And then when you go to join your security data source, just make sure that you're joining on your new calculation and setting that equal to your employee ID or whatever ID you're trying to secure. And you can see, and then all the other steps are the same. And then again, you can see that I don't have access and it says secured. This is where I hid the field. So I'm going to show hidden fields. All I did was right click and then select hide. And you can see that now when I view the data behind my graph here, full data, it has secured as the PIN number. And then the real PIN number that we hid is not an option when you when you view that full data. And then the same thing were to happen if you were to export this to a CSV file. That PIN number that we hid would not come through that CSV. So I hope that answers.
Oh, that was perfect. The one I saw a couple of similar questions I was just reviewing. Does this method that you're showing work if you were to extract the data?
Yeah, so it should work if you extract the data. Let's see, is it worksheet, export, crosstab to Excel? So because I'm sharing, my Excel's doing funny things, but you'll see now it's just giving you the two fields that are secured. And then if I were to change my user to the person that does have access, so my PIN number is showing, and let's say we view the data. There's the PIN number. There's the PIN number. And then if we were to export the data to crosstab, there's the PIN number.
And this would work because I know right now you technically have a live connection to your Excel file, but if you were to create a data source extract of that, I think this works as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I do believe the first method also works. I know there was a question on multiple tables that I don't know the answer to. We can follow up offline. The third method, the impersonate, has to be a live connection. So hopefully that addresses some of the questions that we had. I believe there was also a question on how is this impacted by level of detail calculations. There is a pretty great, let me see if I can find it really quick. There's a Tableau reference that's pretty solid on this. I'm trying to see if it has anything.
Mark, I stopped sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Just so you know, yep.
Cool. While I don't know the exact answer, what I would do is I'd go to this page on Tableau's order of operations. Technically, you're creating a set, so I would assume that it's being evaluated at the same point there relative to like your include and exclude level of detail calculations. Not sure how it handles things that are all happening all at the same time, like sets and fixed level of detail, but I would go here to start that kind of investigation. And maybe one more time for one more question. There was a question on can you add multiple users in the condition in kind of one like swipe? I believe you are able to use, and Jana mentioned this in her example, you can have like different groups and kind of do it at a group level for at least the first two methods. We went through individuals to kind of, I think it's easier to see how individuals work, but a lot of what we covered can be scaled up at a group level if it exists. But with that, I think we can wrap up the questions. And I believe we can get these kind of exported and follow up later and post on our group page as well for anything that we didn't.
Yes, I actually, we can get the transcripts of questions and
Perfect.
try to answer them through a Word document or something.
Cool.
So next up we have Sean Miller. Sean, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah. All right. So let me get going here. And let me know. It says I'm sharing, so hopefully you can see it.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Awesome. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Greetings from Kansas City. I am technically on the Missouri side, but as many of you know, there is a Kansas City, Kansas. So the whole Kansas City area welcomes you. I work at Cerner, and today I'm excited to talk to you about Cerner's Healthy Intent and Healthy Analytics platform, our big data platform, and how we use it to help health systems see and understand their data. So what we're going to talk about today, briefly, I want to go over Cerner's population health strategy, give you a brief overview of how we ingest the data, clean the data, look at the data, and get it into a format that we can finally then visualize and analyze. And that's all done through our Healthy Intent and Healthy Analytics platform. And then lastly, I'm going to finish up with giving you guys a couple few demos of some of the content that we've created here. So as you know, Cerner is, we are healthcare IT. And first, who am I? My name's Sean Miller. I'm a senior BI developer here at Cerner within our population health management space. I sit on a COE for all of our analytics users. I'm a Tableau desktop certified professional. I also lead the Kansas City Tableau user group, and also a Tableau social media ambassador. So I'm all over social media. You can follow me on Twitter at hipstervizninja. And I was actually introduced, my director actually introduced me to a client as, this is Sean, and he's kind of our hipster viz ninja guy. So that's kind of how that name kind of came up. And other things in the community, I'm also a contributor with Workout Wednesday. In fact, this week, I actually shared a challenge that had to do with healthcare data and quality metrics. So if you're interested in checking that out, definitely want to point you to that. So workoutwednesday.com. And then lastly, my Tableau public content is actually featured in the book #MakeoverMonday. So really excited to be here and to share all of the different things that we're doing here at Cerner with Tableau. So you know, at Cerner, we're healthcare IT. We made our you know, we made a name for ourselves with on the EMR EHR side. Many of you probably are using hopefully using Cerner within your organizations, within your health systems. So we kind of expanded on that several years ago, and we said, how are we going to help, you know, because most health systems don't have just one EMR type. They have many EMR types depending on different units. And so how are we going to help health systems bring all that data together, normalize it, aggregate it together, and do all that? So, you know, here at Cerner, we believe in a seamless and connected world where everyone thrives. And our mission is to relentlessly seek breakthrough innovation that will help shape healthcare of tomorrow, because we believe that healthcare is too important to stay the same. And you know, whenever we really feel that Tableau kind of fits nicely into our mission and vision, because at the rate of speed that Tableau is innovating, we're able to take those innovations and help health systems do more with their data. So our population health strategy, you know, it's really dependent on the person, you know, the member, and you know, to best support the person, you know, our comprehensive suite of solutions and services are designed to enable health systems to know, engage, and manage at both a person and a population level. And so, in order to do that, you first need to identify the population based on a set of criteria, so that you can most effectively engage people, engage the patient, their families, and their care team. And then once the strategies have been implemented, that's when analytics kind of comes in and helps manage and predict outcomes by monitoring performance and adjusting strategies as needed to attain the best results. So, and the way that we do all that is with our Healthy Intent big data platform. So, as I mentioned, health systems have lots of different data sources, and so our Healthy Intent platform brings all that together, and it can literally come from just about anywhere. So all your EMRs, we can bring all that in there, all your devices, lab results, all that kind of stuff. We kind of bring it in here. And then we run our normalization standardization ETLs. And what we also have a person matching algorithm so that we can actually figure out, we can actually match up across all those different sources the same person. And we also do a standardization and normalization process so that your service date from your CMS claims is the same service date from your Blue Cross and Blue Shield claims data sets. So we do all that to kind of mix it up. And what we end up with is a full longitudinal record of a patient, which is really, really important. And then from there, once we have this longitudinal record, we can apply analytics on top of that to, we can provide analytics to the person that needs that specific type of analytics. So whether it's the person, whether it's the care manager, the clinician, the provider, me, the analyst, and all the way down through the chain. So that's kind of how we bring everything together. And speaking of those data connections, we have over 1,100 data connections and counting, including more than 65 EHR sources. So all the big players can hook right into our Healthy Intent platform, and we can bring it all together, which is really, really great. And then once we have all that, once we go through all that process of bringing all the data together and aggregating and normalizing and creating that longitudinal record, then that's when we're ready to put some analytics on top of that. So, and that's what we get with our Healthy Analytics and Healthy EDW platform. And we utilize both Tableau for data visualization, and we also are still using in quite a large capacity SAP Business Objects. Two very different tools, as we all know, and we use those smartly together to use the right tool for the right job. If you need a work list of 1,000 patients with all of this demographic data, we all know that Tableau is not suited to do that. So that's why we have our business object solution. And if you need a dashboard, likewise, don't try and build a dashboard in business objects. That's what we have Tableau for. And they work really seamlessly together, where we can actually have a dashboard, a high-level dashboard, where users can click and filter and get all the way down to a specific level. And once they're ready to get down to a detail level, we can use URL parameters to pass through dashboard parameters into a BO report and get exactly the data that they need. So what else do you get with Healthy Analytics? You get a lot of stuff that is, you can bounce all of your data off of industry-leading benchmarks, evidence-based algorithms, reference open data. So we have the NIPS data set. We've got Milam and Mara risk scores, Truven service categories. All these different really great stuff to kind of bounce off your data to ensure that really kind of, again, trying that act and measure aspect of your data to see how you're performing, which is really, really great. So let's finally get into Tableau. So that was a quick high-level overview. I could spend even more time going over our Healthy Intent platform, but this is a Tableau user group, so let's get into Tableau. And so this looks at our Tableau. We're looking at our Tableau server environment. We've got 4 clusters, 3 in AWS, 1 on-prem. As you can see, our number of users and sites are very, very large. So we're dealing with a hefty load of folks, which is great. And then other things, so this is just our US implementation. We also have an implementation over in the UK where the NHS is actually utilizing our Healthy Intent and Healthy Analytics platform, which we're really excited about. And if you're keeping up in the healthcare news, you probably heard a while back that the United States Department of Defense and the DoD both signed with Cerner to be their EMR provider, as well as their data analytics providers. So here in just a couple of months, we'll be onboarding the DoD and the VA later this year, which is really, really exciting. And then we've got other geographies. We've got other European nations that are getting on board with us, which is really, really exciting. So my team. So here are just some of those clients that are on Healthy Intent and Healthy Analytics right now. Some of the really big ones. We've got Intermountain. We've got Geisinger. We've got Memorial Hermann. A lot of people are using us, and a lot of folks are really, really happy. So we're excited about all of our partnerships and our clients. And I actually work with a lot of our clients. My job is I work with our clients to figure out what's the next thing that you want to start analyzing, what's the next question you want answered, and we'll work together to basically create a host of content out of the box, ready to go. And this is just a quick list of some. This is just a handful of our content that we have out of the box, ready to deploy. With modifications, of course, to fit health systems' particular needs. And so I don't do this alone. I've got a whole team of awesome Tableau developers that help us create all this wonderful content for healthcare providers. And so now what I'd like to do is jump into some of that content. So the first thing that I wanted to show is some of the stuff that we're doing with avoidable ED visits. So the NYU avoidable ED algorithm, if you're not familiar, is basically all ICD-9 and 10 codes that come in from a claim, where they basically created this algorithm that tells you a probability of whether or not that ICD-9 or 10 code, that diagnosis, that primary diagnosis is, was it avoidable? Did they need to go to the ED? Or could it have been solved in a non-emergency facility? So we've had a few different ways of trying to get around this, to look at this. And I was talking with a client one day, and what they said to me was, I'd really like to see this visual right here in a dashboard. It'd be really cool to see where all of my stuff is going. And I was a little bit apprehensive at first because the medical director that I was talking to was like, one of those node diagrams, and I knew what he was talking about, but we try and stay away from those novelty charts as much as possible. But when it makes sense, we'll go do it. So this is what we created, and so we're looking at our for all of ED visits for 2018. You're able to see what we're able to do is we're able to see where your money is, where your diagnoses are flowing, and so which is really cool. So what we did is we took the ICD-9 and 10 codes. Each of those codes has a percentage, probability percentage on each one of these nodes here. And then what we do is we kind of we take the total cost of a claim and we multiply that by that percentage on each one of those nodes. So we kind of reverse engineer into the total dollars for each node, which then kind of gives us this overall avoidable percentage for that. So this is how our clients are using this dashboard to look at where this is going. They can come down here and they can see which diagnosis group, and then we're actually rolling up all of the diagnoses with HCUP data into groups. So this is level 2, but you can see which ones you can see. Respiratory infections has a really high rate of avoidable probability. So you can easily you can come down here and search for that, and that will flex this dashboard appropriately, and it will kind of course, live demos, right? So you can see, you can do this by provider. There we go. So you can do this by provider. You can see which provider has the highest number, and these are attributed providers. This is not the ED docs. These are the PCPs of these members that are coming in. And so you can see this person had 21 ED visits related that had a respiratory infection throughout 2018. And so if we click on that, what you can actually get is I actually created kind of like a Gantt chart. So every mark on this Gantt chart is a visit to the ED with one of those respiratory infections. And when you hover on that, you're able to get even more, and you're actually able to get the actual diagnosis that they got. So we're grouping up the diagnosis group to respiratory infections, but then whenever you hover on the details. So we're going from high level all the way down to detail in a nice compact package, which is really nice. So that's kind of what we're doing with avoidable ED visits. The next thing that I wanted to show you is so we're doing a lot of really cool stuff with bundled payments and episode management. And so CMS has an episode bundled payment program that people can voluntarily opt into, and then you can read more about it at this website here. But then what you can do with that is we created this dashboard, set of dashboards really, to kind of help manage and evaluate all of these bundled payments. So really quickly, what do I mean when I say bundled payment? These are the episode groups here on the left. So basically what happens when somebody is admitted into the hospital with a stroke, that if they're enrolled in the BPCIA program, that's going to set off, when they're admitted, that starts their 90-day episode. So what happens is CMS will group all of the claims 90 days post entry into the acute space with a stroke, and then they'll measure that for 90 days, and then they'll come up with an average spend. So that's what that black bar is. So the average episode spend is $34,000 for this demo client, but the average target price that you're agreed to by CMS, we're saying for all of these, in the past, historically, all of your stroke episodes should have a cost of around $33,000. And so this is kind of a way for us to kind of identify and manage episodes of care where we might need to intervene. And again, that whole mantra of, I think it's Schneiderman's mantra of high level, click and zoom, and then details on demand. Again, we're using that here. So you can see I'm over my target price, but whenever I drill into the details and I click on that, you can see really quickly, each one of these is an episode, and you can see I had some outliers here. So maybe I'm not doing so bad if I remove some of these outliers. So again, it's just kind of a way to kind of drill into the detail. Other things that we really like about this dashboard is, we're using color, very intently. We only have 3 colors on this dashboard: red, blue, and gray, and we're using the red and the blue to, draw the eye to where it should go. So red is you're over the target price, and blue over here is when you're going in network or out of network. So you're really able to see that pretty quickly. So, and then we have, because it's an episode of 90 days, this is kind of the starting point, right? This is the acute admission, and this kind of sets off everything. And then we have everything that happens after the after their discharge. So, you know, if they're discharged to a SNF facility, so now we're looking at, of all of my episodes for this time frame that were initially discharged to a SNF facility. You know, here's some high level metrics to measure that. So you can see we had a lot of sepsis folks that were initially discharged with sepsis, just to kind of get an idea of this. And then your actual SNF facilities, you can see readmission, you know, days to readmission. So, you know, we had a lot of people that were readmitted into the acute setting post initial SNF discharge. So we had, you know, several people who were discharged from SNF after an episode that immediately went back into the acute setting. So this is a really good way to do that. Clients have been really happy with managing all this. And then lastly, providers like to be compared against each other. They're very competitive. So we created this. So one of the things that we really liked about this is, so here are all really high level KPIs and for all of our providers. And then if you click on a provider, then what's going to happen is this blue bar is going to change for whatever provider you selected. And then this black reference line is going to be the overall average across all of the providers. So you can see, you know, you can see that, you know, really quickly, this provider has a higher percentage of discharge to SNF. However, whenever they do get discharged to SNF, their average SNF length of stay is shorter than the average. So just some interesting things to kind of, you know, pick up and key in on to see how that's how the providers are doing. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to show you is the how we're looking at how we're identifying high cost members. So this dashboard is kind of a newer dashboard for us, and we have, you know, in the old world, the high cost members was just a report of total cost by member, sorted descending, right? And so it was just, you pick the first one, you go look into their claims. It was a very tedious process. And so here, what we're able to do by kind of gathering up some of those processes that you would go through and look at, we're able to kind of aggregate all that together and see if there's any trends with your high cost members. And this is the way that we've come up with to look at that. So these are all of our members and their spend, their total spend for this time frame. And so this jitter plot shows their total spend sized by average encounter, cost per encounter. So when you hover on here, you can see what their total spend was, their cost per encounter, and then an actual breakdown of the different types of encounters that they had. So you can see really quickly, you know, which ones you need to go look at. And, you know, obviously, you know, one of the big things that everyone said, you know, when we started doing this was, you know, well, everybody's just going to go, they're going to want to go look at this guy. And we still wanted to provide that ability, but you're able to say, okay, you know, some of these people might be, you know, these are end of life. So there's nothing I can do to manage their care. And, you know, and these folks over here, they're not quite yet to where I want. So by using parameters, we're able to filter down into a range to kind of say, okay, these are the people that I can go manage. And we also added this ability to zoom in on that because the bubbles can get pretty small and pretty compact. So by adding this little parameter here, we're able to zoom in on just that person, or just that parameter value there. And then here we can see, you know, we can see a population pyramid of of those members that fell within this range. And, this was an interesting chart that I had to build. Whenever we started talking about with this client about this, they had concerns about population pyramids because it's population pyramids are really easy at you can compare quickly across age and a single gender, right? So I can quickly scan down this list and I can see where where I have a lot of males coming in here, but it's really hard to compare within the same category, age bucket. It's really hard to compare the averages or compare the totals within that, compare females to males. So this was my my solution to that, where I basically created a hollow bar chart that fills out the excess of the other gender. So as you can see, the 35 and under age bucket has a lot more males than females in it. And as you go down, you can see that the 70 to 74-year-old age bucket has more females than males. So it's a really easy way to kind of look down, but you can also look across. And they were really, they really like that that view there. So again, you can drill in. You can see what service categories are spending the most. Which chronic conditions do most of my patients have? And again, you're only looking at this range of folks that you've filtered down to, and that's all configurable by the user as well. And then getting down into that drill to detail, you can see, not going to show you, but we have this link that will take you to a BO report for just members who have spent between $50 and $150,000 who had, diagnoses of complications. So you can quickly get in the member detail, get into the provider level detail, get into the claim detail, really, really easy. But this is just a really nice way for us to kind of aggregate, bring together, look for trends, look for hotspots of different providers or different high cost members. So that kind of takes us to the end of the demo. There are two things that I wanted to wrap up with before we get to the Q&A. And being in the Tableau community, sharing is caring, and so it only felt right for me to put together and give you the, I actually created that scaffolding model for the avoidable ED visits. And so you can actually go to my data.world page, and this is all going to be in the PowerPoints that I'll post out on the Health Tug website forum. But you can go to this website, download the scaffolding data, and then use it to help create that node diagram if you're wanting to do that. Additionally, I've also created a Tableau workbook that actually walks through how to actually set it up. So you can go and download this workbook and reverse engineer how I actually used this scaffolding model to actually build out that. And then I give you basically a couple of options. One option, not depending on the number of people that you have, number of claims in your activity data, you can either join every single row in the scaffolding model to every single row in your activity data, which is going to explode the number of records by a factor of 343, which is massive. Or you can just blend the two data sources together on this NYU type field. So check that out if you want to, and it'll be there for you to kind of play with, and hopefully you can get some use out of. And don't hesitate to reach out to me directly if you have any questions, or you want to, if you have any questions about how I use that. So lastly, before I wrap up, if you want to learn more about Cerner and healthy intent and healthy analytics, we've spoken at a couple of Tableau conferences. So this is, if you want to get more into the technical deep dive of how our platform actually works, definitely want to check out the talk from 2015. We actually go into exactly what the platform is. We give a high-level overview of it, and we actually do some live demos of our web front, our web portal. And then in 2018, we also spoke about our Healthy Intent platform and actually showed some examples of how clients are actually using it. And then the resources, the scaffolding data set, and the example workbook there. And then my email address, don't hesitate to reach out. Follow me on Twitter. And if you're in the Kansas City metro area or in the surrounding area, please check out the Kansas City Tableau user group. We'd love to have you. And with that, I say to you, go forth and viz. Thank you so much. All right,
Sean,
let's take a look at, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead and look at the questions. I was just going to say thank you so much. This was a fantastic presentation.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. All right, let's look. All right, so question. Hi, Sean. What is the underlying data warehouse technology leveraged in the approach? So we have, so basically the Healthy Intent platform, all those different sources, they are loaded into Hadoop, HDFS, and then we have ETL processes that do all that normalizing and standardizing, and then our Healthy Analytics platform stands on Vertica, and so that's the database that we connect to. How long does it take to develop these amazing dashboards? Thank you, Rodrigo, for calling these amazing. You know, it depends on the need. It depends on the client, but I would say, you know, anywhere between, you know, it depends on how messy the data is. You know, I'm sure it's not going to sound surprising for many of you, but I'd say 80% of what we do is trying to get the data to get right, to look right, to you know, to be structured the way that we need it. The Tableau piece is a really quick process. It's more about the data aggregation and data structuring. So, but if I had to give a ballpark on it, you know, anywhere between, you know, a month to 3 months to kind of do all of that. For the Tableau stuff specifically, I'd say we're probably in the, you know, in the 2 to 3 week range to kind of iterate and kind of go quickly for all that kind of stuff. Can we get links? Yes, absolutely. I will post this. I will post this deck, at least for sure. Definitely this this slide that has all the resources, and we can do that for you. So, looks like that's the end of the queue for questions. I will turn it back over to Nicole, Simon, and team.
Thanks so much, Sean. This is Lindsay. It was great. And I think at this point, we're probably wrapping up, but I just want to say thanks to Sean and Jenna and Mark for sharing all your healthcare expertise. For those on the line, we're hoping to have our next virtual healthcare tug in April. And as Simon had mentioned at the beginning, if anyone has any great topics or talks that you'd like to share with us, please reach out to any of the 4 of us, myself, Nicole, Simon, or Mark. We'd love to hear what you have to share and get you kind of on the books. We're always looking for new presenters. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to any of us or any of the presenters on Twitter, Tableau Public, etc. And with that, Nicole, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for taking the time
so
to hear about these presentations.
Yeah, have a wonderful weekend, everyone.